Alright, so we're gonna be shortening the cuffs for this guy's jacket. And the first thing we're gonna do is all of the very fun unpicking. Number one is, of course, not to lose these buttons. So keep them in a nice packet. Oh, and you can see under there, these guys didn't even trim that thread as they were going. That's just how it goes sometimes. So there's nothing too exciting about this job. We're just going to do all the unpicking. The one interesting thing is that 9 times out of 10, these fake buttonholes are a chain stitch. So I'm going to quickly get in there. If you have been doing tailoring a long time, you know unpicking is just the way that we have to live our lives. So I'm not going to do all of that for the camera. You guys know what's happening there. I'm just going to unpick a small portion here so I can get to the back of those buttonholes. And then we'll give a look at how to deal with one of those chain stitches. I'm sure you know a chain stitch. If you just unlock the correct little portion, you will be A4 away. So as you can see, just unpicking everything. So here, you know, the stitching of the button goes all the way through to the inside of the sleeve. I'm just going to open up all of that. Sometimes you can get in from under here and just grab it. You know, it's no real 100% right way. As long as at the end of the day, we unpick everything and get it all nice and open. Let's see. Okay, so once that's out the way, so here with a chain stitch, it's usually here underneath where the button was that there's in a way a lock. So I'm just going to get underneath there and try and just unpick 1 or 2 stitches. And see, there you go. See that? Now all of these should be more or less in the same design, so they'll unravel from the bottom around to the top. So don't try and now all of a sudden get the top going. There you go. So again, you see like under here there's just kind of like a lock knot. Just going to get rid of that, and then you'll see down here at the bottom, if I can just get one of those little threads to loosen up. There we go. Sometimes it will sabotage you and just stop over there. I'm just going to kind of tease those apart, try and get one of those loops again, and there you go. So we're going to carry on doing that, unpick the rest of this lining, open up the vents, and if it is, you see this guy, see is kind of stitched there, we're going to open up all of that so that the whole thing is flat. And then we'll carry on from there. All right, so you can see I have unpicked all of this. I forgot to do that. I'll do that in a second. But at the end of the day, all of this is going to be open. And here, if we can, you don't want to unpick past this corner. Just unpick to here so that the vent is open, but you're going to keep that top part of the vent. So if possible. One last thing we're going to do while we are doing all of the unpicking, just going to get into the lining here. And this portion here where the lining was closed, from the outside, we're just going to open that because we want to get into that hole as well ourselves when we do this sleeve back up at the end. So I'm just going to get in there and find the end somewhere. Obviously, we will never leave something like that just flapping about. So it's a lost peel. We'll always be neatening up our work. But at the end of the day, this one should be quite an easy one to just, here we go. And then, yeah, like I said, we're not just going to leave that lying around. We're going to make sure that all these ends are actually out so that our work will be 100% neat. Even something like that, we don't just want to leave that there. We want to make sure we neaten up our work as we go. Okay, so I'm going to redo that in a second, just unpick that. You don't judge me for that. Just checking, what does this client need? We are shortening the cuffs by 5. So as you know, I like to have a turn up of 5 centimeters, meaning that if I cut it here and turn up 5 centimeters, it will obviously be short by 5. So this is quite an easy one. I'm just going to cut along this original cuff. Now, if it wasn't like that, I'd have to do some maths and figure out where I want to cut. But this is the reason that I do my measures and my cutting before I do the ironing, so that this line is still nice and prominent. I know where it is, so I know where I need to put my lines, where I need to do my cuts. Because once you iron, of course, this line is not going to be quite so prominent. And you'll see here, there should be a little notch there. If not, you can really just take a ruler and just make that go straight there. But if there is a notch, then that notch is more or less in line with the hem or the edge of your cuff. So you're just going to use that notch to determine your length. In this case, I just cut exactly to the notch. So, once I've done that, next thing I'm going to do is just determine if I need extra fusing. So I want at least 7 centimeters here. So here I'm going to turn on 5. It's only going to give me like half, or 1 centimeter there. And this one is not going to give me enough, because I want to turn on 5 and I still want another 2 centimeters. That's just my rule. So we are going to go and iron that a little bit. And we can either do this at the iron or now. I'm just going to put a little notch here on the edge of this vent. Because once we iron, this is going to, this can flatten out. And then it's going to be tough for me to get this line back. But with that notch, I've got it back. And you can see here, this is not 100% straight. See there? So just prepare for that emotionally when we get to doing our vent. And know that obviously from the factory, things happen. Even when we work, sometimes things don't come out 100% straight. As long as we're aware of it, and we're going to sort it out as we go. So we'll catch each other at the iron. So here we are at the ironing station. I'm going to bring this inside out. So the fusing we can use, I like to use scraps here because it's just a small section, but I did not have any scraps that I felt suitable for this fusing. Just going to give this a little bit of an iron so that all these pieces are nice and flat. So here, I'm going to kind of move it out the way like that. I just cut a piece of soft fusing. I'd rather go softer than harder. Just because, especially with this fabric, you kind of have to gauge according to the original fusing, according to the fusing we have, what is going to be the best option. But the most important thing I'm doing here is just getting a flat section. You can do this over a form, but it's easier to do it on the flat. I'm going to move here. Here, I also forgot I want to iron this seam up, because this seam we very often need to manipulate. So now that I've got that section flat, I can come over here. Of course, that's a client. And we're back. So here, just getting everything flat, ironing that. Now this one, I'm just going to give it a little bit of an emotional break so that it can cool down nicely. And I'll look at this jacket. This sleeve. I'll just do the other side. So yeah, gonna flatten that in case we need to adjust it. And then same story. I'm just gonna, here I'm not actually gonna go over the stitching because I like to see where that stitching is. So that, for the adjustment, oh, frack, now I'm doing this upside down. Imagine So same story, just finding a flat portion and then moving that over so I can just do it on the flat. Here, that's not such an important portion, so I'll just cut that off. Also because I busted that up by being an insane person. That's going to be fine. No one will die. Then I'll just go back to the other sleeve, do it for that one. So you see here, all this ironing, you can lose this little line here. So that is why we've got that notch, so that we can get that crease back in when we're done. Okay, so we finished extending the fusing. Of course, if the fusing is high enough, then you don't have to extend it. And then depending on how I feel, what's going on, I can also put an extra piece here where we're going to put the buttonholes, just to make it a little bit more stiff there. So we're going to turn 5, and the buttonholes are going to start at 4, so around 9. I'm going to just put this piece here, kind of around there. You can also put a much thicker one here. I kind of judge it from how the original is. And the original doesn't have anything extra there. So maybe I wouldn't even have done it here. I was just doing it now for the demonstration. You have to just decide what's going to work. In this case, what will be the best thing to do. But it is better to have a little bit of extra fusing there, especially if we're doing a the words out of my head, stacked buttonholes. Let me use a smaller one. It does help to have a bit of extra strength there. So now you'll see when we flip this up, it might not 100% match here. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to do the buttonholes and do this vent, and then we'll double check what is happening here, if we have to actually reshape this section or not. But otherwise, we are going to continue at the cutting table. So something I forgot at the iron is to re-iron this vent, and this is where our notch comes in handy, so I've got a nice straight line there. And then you will have to do this eventually, so may as well do it now, just ironing out the lining so that's nice and flat. I am a little bit extra, so I like to iron this portion out as well. Just so that, if in the factory it was skew, I can now iron that straight and then just fix it. But anyway, I'm going to get the lining out the way. Here's my sleeve. So we're going to turn 5. That's just the measurement that works for me. And then from there, we're going to go 4 centimeters up to where the buttonholes are going to start. So this this was a stacked buttonhole, and you see we're going right up into the top of the vent there. Sometimes you have to go even past the vent. It really depends how much you're shortening. But anyway, we're going to have, for a stacked button or stacked buttonholes, we're going to have 1 centimeter distance. You can always double check that with your buttons. How wide is this button? 1.5. So if you wanted kissing, you would make your button holes 1.5 centimeters apart. If you want stacked, they're going to be 1 centimeter apart. So I'm going to come with my ruler and make sure that I'm perpendicular on the edge of this vent. I'm just going to draw that out. As you see, I'm using a friction pen, one of those heat or pens that disappears with heat. You can always double check this before you put it on your fabric that it is actually going to disappear. Here, make it 1 1/4 from the vent, and lengthwise is 2 centimeters. And I'm just going to square that all up. So there you have it. Yeah, and then I'll just do that on the other side. So as you can see, I'm set myself up now. I've got 2 spools over here coming from the overlocker, and this is all going into one needle. I'm not using a double needle. I'm going to be using the buttonhole stitches here. I don't know what happened to my light. And then here you'll see there's a little white mark here, and that's where I do these fake buttonhole stitches. So let me just get the camera ready, and then we'll continue. See if you can sometimes take this portion off, just to make it easier to get under here. I'm always going to start just doing a little piece down here, and just comparing that with one of the other buttonholes to see that I'm not doing some crazy situation. So obviously down here, this is part of the hem. This will just fall under. No one will know. I'm just going to compare that. I mean, it's a little bit lighter, but of course, there's no chance you're going to get the exact same color. So as long as it's not really obvious, it's going to be fine. Okay, so let's get going. I'm going to align that nicely with my marks. I'm going to go maybe 2 stitches forward and just maybe 2 stitches back, just to lock it a little bit there. Then I'm going to come all the way forward. Now here at the end, I want to stop with my stitch on the inside of where the buttonhole is going to be. Then I'm going to skip the bar tag and go straight to going backwards. And there we have it. And again here, I'm just going to maybe do 2 stitches in the opposite direction by using the reverse foot in the reverse way, by pushing it up instead of down. Here, I actually pull this a little bit more, just so that this has enough looseness in it that it doesn't end up pulling my buttonholes in a weird, funny way. 2 stitches back. So I'm also using, the other buttonhole, the other lines, to make sure that this is as straight as humanly possible. There at the back, a button's going to be over that. So if it's not 1000% straight, it's not a problem. Here in the front, you want this to be as straight as humanly possible. So even if you have to do a half stitch somewhere, so like here, this is now kind of like pulling it backwards, just so that the stitch will end on the inside. And this I'm just going to squeeze back a little bit, so that, see, this like gives you kind of a corner there, and it didn't go too far beyond the mark, just so that there it all looks nice and straight. And lastly, I'm going to do this one. So I'm just going to do maybe 1 or 2 on the other side, because it's not saying enough. Let me just do 2 more stitches. It's not too complicated, but see here, I'm just going to pull it back ever so slightly, just to give it that nice round. It's not all that exciting. Here, what I'm going to do is just cut off this excess. Here on the inside, I don't cut those. I can leave those. But here, I'm going to cut this immediately, because I don't want to be struggling to cut this underneath my buttons. And I definitely don't want to leave it on, like someone who doesn't care about the neatness of their work. So, on the other sleeve, same kind of story, but obviously in reverse. Make sure the lining's out the way. So we're first going to go backwards. So on my machine, this is a number 3. And again, I'm just going to do 1 or 2 stitches to lock it there. Keep this as straight as I can, using the other lines. Because if I line the line up with the side of my foot, I can easily see where is straight. Then skipping the bar tack, coming back, mine's on number 1, and then coming forward like that. And again, just a little bit of a lock there. Pull it a little bit more than needed so that there's looseness in the thread. Back to number 3, do a bit of a lock, and we're just going to continue like that. Yeah, fashion baby. Okay, so here I'm not going to iron this because having these marks is going to help me put my buttons exactly straight. You see, sometimes it's not 100% straight there, so if I iron that away, it can be difficult to get my buttons 100% straight. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to go inside out, and okay, we're here at the vent. Here we are. So this one, easy peasy. This is just coming up 5 centimeters. So this one, I can just, I can put a notch, I can do a measure, whatever I want to do. There's my 5 centimeters where I'm going to turn up. And you see, in this case, turning this up didn't interfere with this vent. Sometimes you're shortening so much that it interferes here, and then you have to unpick this. Then just make sure that here you've done a backstitch so that it doesn't end up unraveling your entire sleeve. Then here what you're going to do, we're going to sew this, but we're not going to go all the way. We're going to leave maybe 1.5 centimeters open here. And this you'll sew about maybe 3/4, maybe 1 centimeter seam allowance. Here, we're now going to have our miter corner. And here also, if you look at this, it's not 1000% straight, as you see there. And this often happens with the big part of the sleeve that it has a bit of a curve here. Let me show you there. Of course, yeah. So you see there, it's not 1000% straight. So that is quite normal. It often has a bit of a curve here, which can be difficult. So we're trying to get a square here as much as we can. I know my turn up is 5 centimeters, so I'm getting that as straight as I can there. Let's actually keep this flat for now. So I'm going to keep this as straight as I can. You see here it's not 100% perpendicular on this vent. Don't stress so much. Here's my 5 centimeters, so that's where I'm going to turn up. And here's my vent where it's going to fold there. So what I need to do is determine if I fold this up, where is the meeting point? Where is that cross point going to be? So this one, I want 5 centimeters there, and I'm just going to make it parallel with this line. So there's my 5 centimeters there. This one is 4.5. Yeah, just under 4.5. So make that just under 4.5, parallel to the vent, and then I'm going to see where my connection is. Then, perpendicular to the vent, matching this point here, I can see where I need to stitch to. Same here, perpendicular to my hem and touching this point, I can see where I'm going to stitch to there. I know here's my cross, so sometimes this will be a straight line, but not today. So never assume it's going to be a straight line. So you see there, I'm connecting each of those points to the corner of my vent. And I'm just going to fold that. I can check that these two little spots are matching there. Put a pin through and check that it is the same on both sides. There we go. Come down to the corner. And again, you're going to leave maybe 1.5 centimeters from the edge. You're not going to stitch all the way to the edge. Let me just do this one quickly. I think let's do the other side just for funsies. to make absolutely sure that we've got it all under control. Now, one thing that I should have done that I forgot to do is to check here before we actually do all of the stitching, especially on the underside of the vent, to just check that this is actually straight. So you hear the top vent is a little bit lower, and that's actually fine. If it's a little bit higher, there's a problem. You see, that's more or less straight. Okay, so let's sort this out. 5 centimeters parallel here. And you see here on the vent, not parallel. Don't stress. And I'm just going to check that 5 centimeters up, parallel, while I'm at it. This should be just under 4.5. I'm going to again go 4.5. There it is. I'm going to go perpendicular on this fold line, touching that point, see where I am there. Just get that perfect. Perpendicular on the vent, touching that point, see where I get there, and then just join those to the center, or to the corner of the vent. This one I'm just going to quickly mark. Where's my 5 so that I know where to turn in a moment. And then again, making sure I'm on the corner, matching those two lines. And this one I'm just going to fold right up like that. And just remembering that we're not stitching all the way to the end. We're stitching to like 1 centimeters from the edge. All right, awesome. All right, so I've done all of that stitching, and I'm just gonna give that a little bit of a press. I like to just press everything that I sew. That's just how I roll. Try not to shake the camera too much. Let me move this a little bit. So there I'm just giving everything a bit of a press. There I'm giving everything a bit of a press. This underneath part of the vent, I'm just going to turn. I like to use a knitting needle. I'm sure you know it is actually illegal to do what I just did. You're supposed to be using a pin to pull on the stitches, but I never do that because no one will control me. I'm just going to give, and I just iron that corner. I don't iron the rest of this. Here, I'm going to just trim this off, but I'm going to leave quite a bit there, maybe 2 centimeters. Just trim that a little bit down there, just so that we don't have so much bulk. Here, you can use the goat or knitting needle or combination. This is just to make sure that it's really nice and crisp, that edge. I'll fold this out. Again, using my knitting needle. I'll just poke that out there and then give that corner a nice little press. So now I've got that edge done. Number 1, I'm just going to fold in it. I just want to check, does this actually close nicely? See, the underside is a little bit shorter than the top, but I think we will get away with that. That's going to be fine. No, that's all right. If it's too much, we have to go back and redo. And then here, I'm going to go, I'm going to put a pin here. I'm going to grab some more pins. So I'm going from this edge, and I'm wanting to make sure everything's smooth. I don't want to pull this to create like pleats here. I want to make sure everything is smooth. Let me try it on a bigger one. It's a challenge between too big and too small. Just use this one. In here, I want to make sure I've got a 5 centimeter turn up. Give it a little bit more. Okay, I'm just gonna give a little bit of an iron there and put a pin so it can hold there. You see here, when I get to this portion, as you can see, my stitching is not lining up. So I will need to redo this portion. Just going to see here, where is 5? Now, sometimes here on the edge, you can cheat a little bit. Do like 4 3/4. It's just going to make it look a little bit neater. We are going to re-iron that, so don't stress too much. Just going to put a pin there for now. I'm going to do the same for the top part of the vent. Just going to make sure everything's flat. Put a pin here, and then travel this way, making sure it's all nice and flat, and add 5 centimeters. Now, if this part of the cuff is curved, then you do need to curve it. I've never seen one like this from a factory, so I just kind of skip that. But if you do see that that's curved, you will need to stretch this portion out. But we can see this one. It's not curved. It's from a factory. It's reasonably straight. It's just because we've now moved up the sleeve that it's becoming a little bit wonky. So see, this one also doesn't match. So we are going to have to extend this. Now I can also see here what kind of manipulation I'm going to have to do. If I want that to match, will I be able to just, if I just come to like a 1/4 centimeter seam allowance right on the edge of this cuff, it will fit. Only just, it will pull a little bit, but it's okay. It's better than, no one will die. And also, I could, if it didn't work, then I could here just bring this in a little bit and then curve it out. But for now, I'm just going to stitch along this one. And then when I get here to the 5 centimeter mark, I'm just going to curve that out and just come like right to the edge there. That's going to be totally fine. I'm just going to do that then for the other sleeve, and we'll continue from there. So this one I went and stitched it anyways, because these two should be reasonably the same, one would hope. And so I just stitched that open, giving me basically no seam allowance right there at the edge. Just going to iron that open. And while I'm here, I may as well get my 5 centimeters. Here I'm matching the seam. I'm not going to be too extra about it matching or not matching. I just have to let this seam go where it wants to go. I've got to iron these. And yeah, same story, just going to flatten that out. Flip it around. Use my knitting needle. Get myself a nice fashion corner. Is this a mitre? I think this is actually a letter edge. Who can know? So many different words for things. Oh, I don't know. Germans call it the letter edge. Brieve I think that is actually the name of it. Whatever. As long as it's fashion, that's what matters. So we've now got that portion. Going to see what's happening here. Get a nice 5 centimeters. You see that? It's not matching very nicely, but it's good enough. Also for these alterations, as long as it's gonna all come together nice. You see, this is very, very crunched there. But I am folding it now in the opposite direction. So this is gonna be folded towards the inside. See, it's not actually too bad. It could be better naturally, but you see here, if we flatten this, flat, that is just on the edge. You see there's a little bit of a gather, but nothing too hectic. You see there, it actually wants me to be a little bit there, and if I keep that there, see, this actually falls quite nicely. So I can see to myself, if I just mismatch that seam ever so slightly, then no one will ever be the wiser. So I'm coming this side. Obviously, I've already done my unpicking, so I can just open the seam nicely. And basically just redo what I was doing. I'm going to get my 5 here. I'm going to pin this a little bit close to the edge so that it's not going to force my seam anywhere it doesn't want to go. You see there again, if we flatten that out, it wants my seam to be a little bit misaligned there. And then here, if I flatten that out, you see it does gather it ever so slightly, but it's really not going to be a problem. There we go. So that is that. Oh, I should double check. So this one I checked. See, a little bit smaller will survive. This one, oh, frack. What does this one look like? Same story. Do I want to redo that? Yeah, that's too much. This I need to redo. And you see here, look at my measurements. 5 exactly, 5 exactly. Sometimes it just happens like that. Let me see. Oh, there's nowhere where I can really see done anything wrong. So yeah, here I just need to redo that. That's just life. I'm gonna redo that, come back and iron just so I can get those to match over there. That is the life. Okay, so just went back and redid those, just so they line up here at the bottom, nice and perfect. Now, there's a couple of things that need to happen here, including finding more pins. And first thing I'm going to do is pin this, as kind of straight as I can see it. If I look here, I can feel the edge of the vent with my finger, and that's just, let's say 4, remember it was like 4.5, this vent. Now here I've stitched 1, so I expect this to be about 3.5, and yeah, you see that's more or less 3. It's all right. I'm going to check this one. If I put this straight as a ram, it's going to be about 3. And I want to check these two against each other, that when they're done up, they are going to be the same size. Excellent. And then I just want to check, I want to turn this around and just check there that this actually is going to line nice and smooth. So you see here, we've got a bit of a corner there, which I'm not too happy about. I actually want this to be more flat. So let's maybe push that to 4. Let's push it to 4. I think that's going to just look a little bit more professional. Let's do the other one. You see, same story. It just looks like you can see there that isn't actually lying straight. So I'm going to push that to 4. And check these against each other. Fashion, baby. Okay, so coming back inside out. Like I said, a couple things are happening. I'm gonna first stitch that vent. I like to secure that vent. Just makes me feel secure, which is why I do it. So here I'm just using regular double cotton. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of hide that knot under here somewhere. I'm gonna come, I don't want to be closer than about 2 centimeters from the edge here, but I'm just gonna do a whip stitch here. Obviously not coming through to the right side of the sleeve, just to secure this in its place. I know I'm being extra, but that's why people pay me. So, and I don't want to come up further than this opening that we left here. Remember, we didn't stitch all the way to the edge. We left that 1.5 centimeters open there. So I don't want to close that. I just want to come maybe to about here and just secure that. Of course, I'll be doing the exact same on the other sleeve, but for now, we're going to continue here. So I'm actually going to put this needle aside because I'll be using it again. I'm going to take another needle, and this one I'm going to thread double. So I like to take 3 arm lengths because I'm extra. I don't know if you guys like to work with threading the needle double. I'm a huge fan of it, even though it can be tough to thread. Alright, so I've now got these 4 threads. Just going to do a single knot there. Not even going to cut that off. I'm going to move this right way around. Hopefully not lose my thimble in the process. And I'm going to put my buttons back. Alright, so I'm going to just put a needle here, a pin here, just to keep that all looking fash. I'm going to come from this side. I'm going to find, okay, there it is. So obviously these are dummy buttons. They are not functioning. So it doesn't have to be super secure. So I don't go too crazy with these. I like to do an X on my buttons. That's just how I roll. You see this pen mark really does help. It helps me see exactly where I want to put my button. So I like to go right to left, and that gives me a nice diagonal there. I'm going to come up here. Now these are stacked, so I want to give it a little bit of space there. It's a little bit too much. No, that's going to be enough. And I'm going to come under here. Make sure I don't have some crazy frog knot happening. Okay. Yeah, on this one I'm just going to go once and a knot. Because this is a dummy, I don't need to be so extra. Then I'm going to go underneath and come up for the next one. Now here at the back, I'm going to make sure that this is not too tight because I don't want it to pull funny, give me a funny shape there. So I'm just going to give a bit of looseness there, and then I'm just going to stitch one more here. And that kind of locks it, well enough for a fake button or fake buttonhole. And again, I'm going to do a diagonal. And then here, come right to left. Make sure I have enough room. Come up here. I'll kill that guy so long. That's going to be fine. Again, right to left. Oh, of course, yeah. This is the challenge with 4 threads. They're not 100% equally equaled. Then they can give you some drama. So again, I'm just going to go around once and then do my knot. See, those are going to stack nicely. Again, underneath. So the one thing that we need to be cautious about here is, like I said, we don't want too much tension here. We don't want that to pull. And also, we don't want to stitch any of this down. We want to leave this open. So I'm just going to make sure that as I'm going, I don't do extra stitch now? That I don't stitch that portion down, because that is our seam allowance that we need to close the lining. Okay, so nothing too exciting happening here, just continuing. Making sure there's a bit of looseness in the button so that it doesn't not want to stack on top of his friends. And with my left hand just feeling underneath there that I'm not catching this portion of the turn up, because like I said, that is our seam allowance. And we're going to use that now in a moment. Okay, last button, and this one is the one that always ends up catching on the seam allowance. Make sure that there's some looseness there. Do a double, do one more stitch as kind of a lock. Now this one we ended up going through quite a couple layers, so you might just go up and down with this one rather than doing one stitch. Let's see. No, that's going to be fine. I'm just need to make sure that I don't grab anything there. And we are almost done. Okay. Okay. There we are. Just going to pass this back. Make sure nothing's going crazy there. Yeah. And here I'll just knot that. You know, this, like, it's, you know, it's not functioning. So as long as it's reasonably secure, we're going to be fine. Here we go. So now what we're going to do, obviously check that it's fashion. Very fashion, look at that, very nice. We're just going to hold the sleeve up and see where this lining wants to fall. Now, generally, rule of thumb is that it will be the exact amount longer as what we turned up here. So this is actually a little bit longer, 6. Let me just double check that. No, it's about 6 centimeters longer. So we want to cut this so that it's flush with the cuff. So I'm just going to get some of that out the way. Now, it is a lining, so I can be a little bit ghetto here. I'm just going to mark that. And I'm going to cut this. I'm just going to make sure it's more or less straight. Now, usually, you know, I'm very extra when I cut, but for this lining, and as you see, I'm cutting a little bit extra. I'm just going to twist that. Always cut a little bit extra just for funsies. Okay, now you can see, so there's the back. This is the front. And I just want to double check. So I'm just going to pull it and see that, yeah, that is actually the front. I haven't twisted it anywhere. And I'm just going to maybe put a pin there just to help myself as it turns. Then I'll turn this inside out. Again, making sure that this line from here is not twisting. And I can go from the inside here, turn that around, and put right sides together. So there, I've got the right sides together. And we should just be able to stitch this all the way around. Now we have also extended the sleeve a little bit in this portion. Remember here, we extended it so it would match. So it might not match 1000% with the lining. That is why I am a big fan of pinning, because it will show you an error before you get to the machine. So you can fix that up before it becomes a drama. And you see here my stitching is already coming undone, because obviously I cut there without reinforcing it. You know, depending on how crazy you are, maybe you can reinforce that. But as long as it's, you know, as long as my new stitch is going to catch that, I really don't feel it's necessary. You see here, we even have a little bit of excess, because usually the lining is cut a little bit bigger than the sleeve. So it's usually not a problem. If you find it's too small, you can, of course, just open up here like we did with the sleeve. And then you'll see here, why do I have a little bit of a bubble there? Is it fine? So you'll see here, this is why we didn't stitch that portion. So we can get in there and stitch that about 1 centimeter seam allowance. So I'm just going to do that quickly and we'll continue. Okay, so we're done with the stitching. You know, here you can, if you really want to, use a zip foot to get right close there. It's not really necessary, but whatever is going to work for you. So from there, I'm going to just untwist this a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is fold up on that fold line. And it should, you know, just fold nicely on that 5 centimeters. If you're feeling uncertain, you can, of course, turn it right way around and then come back. Maybe put some pins or something, but you know, I can just look in there and see that I am on that 5 centimeter fold line. And that's now nicely, you know, folding where I wanted to. So now we just need to secure this a little bit. And I'm just going to use my single cotton, or my single thread. And this one I am going to use like actually a single. I'm not going to double it up. Let me just undo that little knot there. Okay. So I'm just going to do a herringbone just to secure it in place. Of course, you know, a lot of people won't really do this. Even at the factories, they don't really do this. They're either going to glue it. And remember, this was not 100% aligned, so we're going to keep that. I'm not going to force it. Just going to start here under the seam allowance there, and I'm just going to go around. So here, you know, I don't need this to be as secure as a hem, let's say like a suit trouser hem. I just want this to be kind of you know, caught here and there, and just making sure that obviously these stitches are super tiny, just really catching a thread or two of the weave. And you can see the stitches are also quite far apart, maybe like 2-3 centimeters between each stitch. And I'm just going around like that. Nothing too exciting. Just making sure that the whole time I am folded up on that 5 centimeter hem, and that I'm not causing any gathers or pleats anywhere. Obviously here underneath the buttons I can take a little bit more of a stitch into the sleeve, but then here, let's roll this way. Here obviously not the best plan, so I'm just going to take just a little tiny bite from there, and now you can see here there's a bit of gather here, which isn't ideal, but as long as it's not too much. Obviously the inside is going to be a little bit smaller than the outside, so it's all going to balance out. We just don't want that excess to be obvious, which is why we use a herringbone, because there's a bit of movement in that, so it will kind of settle down into what is good for this. And then, here we are again at the seam allowance. And here I'm just going to get that onto the seam allowance. And I'm honestly just going to go 3 times in one place, because this is reasonably secured anyway. And then I'll just from there flip it around. Obviously here we're going to close that by machine, and then here I can double check that everything is actually looking nice. I'm obviously going to put my arm through the sleeve to make sure that I haven't twisted the lining, and then I'll just give that a little press. I'll also put some water here so you can get rid of those original marks, and that will be the shortening. So you can see there a little bit of a gather here and there, but you won't notice that, and we'll keep the